Before we dive into today's story, I want to take a moment to thank you for being here. Stories like these are more than just entertainment. They are part of our culture, our heritage, and they carry lessons that have been passed down for generations. They remind us of the power of choices, the strength of community, and the mysteries that connect us to something greater than ourselves. As you listen, I hope you will find yourselves not just entertained, but also reflecting on the deeper meanings within. This story is a tale of courage, caution, and consequences. It's a reminder that some warnings are more than just words. They are gifts from those who walked before us. So grab a cozy spot, open your heart, and let's journey together into the world of this African folktale. And remember, your thoughts and reflections matter. Feel free to share them in the comments. I can't wait to hear what you think. This story begins with a warning. A strange, almost forgotten tale that older women in the village of Erua told in hushed tones. Do not look into a mirror at night, they would say, their eyes darting as if the very act of mentioning it summoned something. Yet Nneka, a curious and headstrong young woman, dismissed these warnings as the ramblings of a bygone generation. The warning first came to her when she was 8, sitting under the baobab tree with her grandmother, Mama Nnedi. Nneka, the old woman said, mirrors are not just glass. At night they open. Spirits come and go as they please. Some mean no harm. Others, she trailed off, her wrinkled face clouded with fear. You don't want to know. Spirits, Mama, Nneka giggled. Like ghosts? Yes, Mama Nnedi whispered, clutching her granddaughter's wrist tightly. And worse, promise me, child, never to stare into a mirror at night. Nneka giggled, not taking her grandmother seriously. But she obeyed and didn't even think of looking at a mirror in the night. But years passed, and the weight of the old tale faded like a dream upon waking. By the time she was 23, Nneka was the opposite of the obedient child her grandmother once knew. She was bold, inquisitive, and fiercely independent, a woman who laughed in the face of tradition. One humid evening, her friend Chiamaka sat with her on the veranda of her small clay-walled home. The moonlight bathed the village in a silvery glow, and crickets sang in unison. I heard someone in the next village saw their death in a mirror, Chika said suddenly, breaking the silence. Nneka rolled her eyes. Not you too. Do you believe in those old women's stories? Honestly, Chika, you're smarter than this. It's not about being smart, Nneka. Why take the risk? Risk of what? Seeing my own face? Nneka scoffed. Maybe I'll try it tonight, just to prove that there's nothing there. Chika gasped. Don't joke about these things. But Nneka wasn't joking. Deep down, her curiosity burned brighter than her fear. Later that night, long after Chika had gone home, Nneka stood before the mirror in her room. It was an antique thing with a wooden frame carved into intricate patterns of leaves and flowers, a family heirloom passed down for generations. She lit a small oil lamp, its flickering flame casting dark shadows on the walls. She stared at the mirror intently. It's just glass, she muttered to herself, her curiosity mounting. She leaned closer. The carvings on the frame seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. Why does everyone fear you? She whispered to the mirror. The air in the room grew heavy, almost suffocating. But Nneka didn't notice. She leaned closer, her face inches from the mirror, her breath fogging the glass. Her reflection stared back at her, unremarkable and still. Her smooth brown skin gleamed in the dim light, her thick curled hair tied loosely behind her head. She leaned in closer, searching for what? She wasn't sure. Minutes passed, nothing happened. She smirked, feeling a mix of relief and vindication. Old women's tales, she muttered. But as she turned away, something caught her eye. A flicker, barely noticeable in the mirror. She whipped her head back, but her reflection was as it should be. It was just my imagination, she told herself, putting out the lamp and climbing back into bed. Over the next few nights, Nneka couldn't resist returning to the mirror. At first, it was harmless, a quiet rebellion against superstition. But after some days, she began to notice small, unsettling changes. One night, her reflection didn't smile back at her when she did. Another time, the light in the mirror seemed brighter than in the room itself. She wasn't sure if she was really seeing these things or her imagination was playing with her. She confided in Chika, who reacted with horror. "You are playing with things you don't understand. Stop before it's too late." "Too late for what?" Nneka retorted, though her voice wavered. On the 7th night, everything changed. The village was silent except for the distant hoot of an owl. Nneka stood before the mirror, her heart pounding for reasons she couldn't explain. She reached out, her fingers brushing the cold surface. The mirror rippled, as if it were a pool of water. Nneka froze, her breath caught in her throat. All of a sudden, a face emerged from the mirror. Not hers, but something monstrous. Its eyes were sunken, its mouth twisted into a cruel grin. She stepped back in fear. "Why have you summoned me?" the figure hissed. Nneka stumbled back, her legs trembling. I didn't summon anyone." The figure's laughter echoed, filling the room. "You looked into the mirror at night. You broke the barrier. Now I am free." And before she knew it, the figure disappeared. From that night, Nneka's life became a waking nightmare. Shadows moved in the corners of her vision. Her reflection no longer mimicked her movements, and many times when she passed by the mirror, it seemed to watch her, as if it had eyes that were filled with malice. She tried covering the mirror with a cloth, but immediately she did that, she heard a voice seep through the mirror. "You cannot hide from me, Nneka. You invited me in." Nneka became scared. What had she done? Could she have let a wicked spirit loose? Desperate, she sought help from the village priest, an elderly man named Papa Ifeanyi. He listened intently as she recounted her experiences. "You have angered the spirits," he said gravely. "We must perform a cleansing ritual." That night, Papa Ifeanyi arrived with his apprentices. They brought herbs, candles, and a calabash filled with water. Chanting in low voices, they circled the mirror. At first, nothing happened, but as the chanting grew louder, the room turned icy cold. The mirror began to shake violently, and a deafening scream filled the air. "Do not stop!" Papa Ifeanyi shouted. The entity's face appeared again, more scary than before. "She is mine!" it bellowed. "She is mine!" With a final chant, Papa Ifeanyi struck the mirror with the calabash. It shattered into 1,000 pieces, and the room fell silent. Nneka sighed with relief. Thank God it was over. She thanked Papa Ifeanyi and vowed never to stare at any mirror at night, ever again. Nneka thought the nightmare was over, but she was wrong. Over the next few days, the shattered pieces of the mirror seemed to haunt her, appearing almost everywhere she looked, under her bed, in the kitchen, and even in her dreams. She thought she was going crazy. And then one day, she found a note written in ash on her wall, and it read, "I am not gone. I am still here." Weeks later, Chika visited Nneka, who had grown pale and withdrawn. "You look terrible," Chika said, concern etched on her face. "I haven't been sleeping," Nneka admitted. "It's still here." "What is still here?" "The spirit from the mirror. It's still here." Just then, Chika glanced at a small shred of mirror on the table. As she picked it up, She caught a glimpse of Nneka's image in the mirror and her face turned white. Nneka, this isn't your reflection. Nneka stared at Chika, her pulse racing. What do you mean it's not my reflection? Chika held the piece of mirror carefully, angling it towards the light. The image in the mirror was faint but unmistakable. It wasn't Nneka's face. It was the monstrous, sunken-eyed figure from her nightmare. Its lips moved soundlessly, as if it was whispering something to her. This thing is a monster, Chika stammered, dropping the piece of mirror to the ground. Nneka, why didn't you listen? You brought something into this world that doesn't belong here, and it has refused to go away. Nneka grabbed her friend's arm, her voice cracking. I didn't mean to. I didn't know this would happen. You have to help me, Chika. Chika stepped back, her face pale. I don't think I can. You are marked now, Nneka. This is beyond me. The words cut Nneka like a blade. Her best friend, the one person she thought she could trust, was abandoning her. But before Nneka could argue, Chika turned and fled, slamming the door behind her. The house grew creepily quiet after Chika's departure. Nneka locked the door and sat in the center of the room, trembling. She couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone. The air in the room felt heavy, oppressive, as if it were alive. Shadows danced on the walls, twisting into shapes that resembled hands, faces, and eyes. Suddenly, a voice echoed from the corner of the room. She was wise to leave you, Nneka. No one can save you now. Nneka turned sharply, her breath shallow. There, in the darkest corner of her room, the figure from the mirror materialized, its twisted grin wider than ever. What do you want from me? She screamed, tears streaming down her face. The creature tilted its head, its hollow eyes gleaming. You. I want you. Your fear, your soul. You invited me in, and now I will never leave. The next morning, Nneka went to see Papa Ifeanyi again, this time clutching a handful of the mirror's shreds. It's still here, she cried. The mirror is gone, but it's still here. The priest examined the shreds, his expression grim. These fragments are tainted. The spirit's essence has attached itself to them. Destroying the mirror wasn't enough. Then what do I do? Nneka begged. Papa Ifeanyi sighed deeply. There is one way, but it is dangerous. You must return the spirit to where it came from. You must face it. Alone. Alone? Nneka whispered, her voice barely audible. Yes, Papa Ifeanyi said. But be warned. If you fail, it will consume you completely. Nneka had no choice. She was already living in fear. If this is what it would take for her to be free, she was ready to do it. That night, Nneka prepared herself. She gathered the fragments of the mirror, lit candles around the room, and sat cross-legged on the floor. Her heart pounded as she whispered the incantation that Papa Ifeanyi had taught her. The air in the room grew colder with each word. The candles flickered, then extinguished all at once, plunging the room into darkness. A chilling laugh echoed around her. You are brave, little one, but bravery won't save you. The figure appeared again, its form more solid than before. It loomed over her, its twisted face inches from hers. I'm sending you back, Nneka said, her voice shaking but determined. The entity laughed again. Ha ha ha! A sound that made her skin crawl. You think you have that power? Foolish girl. Nneka held up the fragments, their sharp edges glinting faintly in the dim light. You came through these, and through these you will live. The spirit roared, lunging towards her, but Nneka didn't flinch. She clutched the fragments tightly, cutting her palms, and began chanting loudly. The room erupted in chaos. The walls shook and the floor seemed to tilt beneath her. The spirit howled, its form flickering like a dying flame. "You cannot defeat me," it screamed, its voice distorted and inhuman. But Nneka kept chanting, even as blood dripped from her hands onto the fragments. The fragments began to glow, their light growing brighter and brighter until it engulfed the entire room. The creature let out one final ear-piercing scream before being sucked into the mirror fragments. The room fell silent, and Nneka collapsed onto the floor, exhausted. When she awoke, the sun was rising, casting warm light into the room. The fragments lay before her, now dull and lifeless. She gathered them carefully and buried them deep in the forest, where no one would ever find them. From that day on, Nneka became the one who told the warning, "Do not look into mirrors at night," she would say, her voice firm. "They are not just glass, they are gateways, and some doors are better left closed." As Nneka's stories teaches us, some warnings come with a wisdom that goes beyond our understanding. In a world filled with mysteries and unseen forces, it's often better to respect the lessons passed on through generations. Sometimes our curiosity can lead us to places we are not ready to face. What are your thoughts on Nneka's journey? Have you ever ignored a warning and faced the consequences? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves a good African folktale. Thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next one.